My name is Erika Burrows. I am a senior project manager at Colonial Life. Before I was at Colonial Life, I worked for SCANA. It's the ownership of SCANA Energy. If y'all have heard of SCANA Energy here in Atlanta. When I was with SCANA, I was the team lead for the user experience group there, as well as a project manager, and managed a very large project of redoing all 13 of SCANA's web properties. We did all of those in about a year and a half, taking roughly 3,800 HTML pages and whittling it down to about 800. And we did that using a variety of different teams and different ways of applying Agile. So one of the things that I learned during this experience was that not everyone has the same concept of a user. We get very used to how close we are to whatever it is we're building. And you can see that especially with developers and with BAs and anyone who's really, really close to it. So when we were putting our user stories together, I found that the teams I was trying to put together really struggled with a lot of these concepts. Not because they didn't care about the users, but because it was really hard to get into a user's head when the developers especially are the last person to ever see the end user in a lot of cases, especially for that outward facing where you don't even get the benefit of being with your customers. Interestingly enough, if you think about it, SCANA Energy, electric companies, now an insurance company, most of us are customers. But we tend to forget that. We tend to forget that we are customers of our own products or our competitors' products. You can draw a lot of experiences from that. So, user story description. Is everyone in here familiar with user stories in Agile in general from a big picture perspective? Okay. So I won't spend a lot of time on this, but the basic concept of a user story is to say what the user's role is, what is their goal, and why do they want to accomplish that goal. Some of the reasons that this is so important to developers is because a lot of times we get the what, or we get someone's version of the what, but we don't get the why. And if you don't get the why, you don't have the opportunity to actually solve the problem. A lot of times we just take the requirements that are given and we do whatever it said to do. But what a user story does, and this is invest, I won't read through this, but these are the pieces that make up a good user story. A lot of this is very important from a development side, that it's testable, it's small enough, we're always trying to figure out how to get things into a 2-week window, all those types of things. But one of the most important things is that it's valuable. One of the most important things about Agile in general is that it's the delivery of valuable software and valuable solutions to customers. And so if we spend a lot of time, no matter what methodology we use, if we spend a lot of time building something that the users never wanted, we wasted our time and our money. So a lot of what user experience is about is, yes, making the user's experience pleasurable, doing usability studies and things like that to make it easier for our customers to be able to interact with us. But it's also about finding out what to build when and why so that we're building the right thing. And a lot of people don't realize that user experience plays a role in that. So during our entire exercise, we'll be pretending that we all work for a company. And we have a sprint coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be creating some user stories for those sprints. And in particular, we're going to address the feature of login and registration. I picked something that conceptually is pretty easy to develop. It's out there and been there. But it's important to think about things even if we've done them before, because technology changes all the time, and so do users' interactions. So this is an example of a user story. As a registered user, I want to log in so that I can access my account information. That was pretty straightforward. But you'll see some things, it doesn't just say a user. It's a particular type of user. So what you can tell from the stories of the developer is we're not talking about people who are registering for the first time, right? We're already registered. And I want to log in so that I can access my account information. I have an expectation as a user that I'm going to be taken to a very specific place or given very specific content after I log in. But this is where some user stories go wrong. And I've seen all of these examples in real life. This one is, as a product owner, I want users to be able to enter a username and password in the left hand of the first screen under the logo so that they can log in. So what's wrong with this story? The user's incorrectly stated. What else?
The user story is asking for a specific user interface implementation rather than the bigger picture of wanting to reach the goal of being able to log in.
So it's how instead of what? I'm sorry? Why? Why do they want to log in? Yeah. So a lot of things are missing, and you'll see this is kind of what traditional requirements feel like to developers, right? This is someone in business decided they want it this way, and they're so used to delivering requirements, especially once you get BAs that have been in the system for a while, that tell you exactly what to do, but never exactly tell you why. And this is some holdover for that. You see a lot of this if the product owners are business analysts, and it's just a habit to break. As a developer, I need to create a database connection page so that a username and password can be verified during the login function. What's wrong with this story? It's a task. It's a task. Does it say what the user's going to do? Right. These are the bane of my existence. I get these more than anything. As a login page, I need a JavaScript file to handle the hashing of the passwords for the login and registration so that the passwords will be secured. Do we want to even begin what's wrong with this? So this happens a lot. It's when you start really getting into, from a technical perspective, what the technical needs are. It actually goes beyond task into the really technical, and what you're looking for is tasks and acceptance criteria and those types of things, but it never really gets to what the user needs, right? So what does the user need? What are we assuming the user wants here? Secure login, right? So we're after a secure login. So how do we understand the user? There's a lot of different ways. If you have a UX department, a lot of this information will come with that. But what I find is a lot of places don't have a formal UX department. They might have an interface designer, right? That you may have that person on your team who does a lot of research on where buttons are these days and where the navigation should go. And that's not user experience. It is user interface design, and that's very important. But it's not quite the same thing as user experience. User experience is really understanding what the user's needs are. A lot of places also have information architect. That kind of plays into this a little bit. It tells you how to put things together in a way that makes sense to a typical user. But again, it's a typical user, and most of the time, information architects and interaction designers don't really work with an actual customer. So user experience folks are really after the true end user of the product. So as a UX person, I have a lot of these tools at my disposal, but I actually started doing user experience long before I knew it was a thing. I didn't even know I was doing user experience. I was trying to understand what it was that I needed. And what I started out with was analytics, starting with data. So if you have a web-based product and you don't have analytics going, you should leave the room now and go hook it up, because it's the most important thing that you can do for ongoing data from your customers. A lot of people just put the top level analytics on, but if you put them deeper, you can really learn a lot about your users. You can learn where they go in their paths, as opposed to just what door they came in or who they got referred from, which is more the market, what marketing's interested in. So speaking of marketing, marketing can give you a lot of demographic information. They know who your customers are. They can give you some of the basics, how many men or how many women, what are the age brackets, those types of things can really start to put a picture in your head of who your users are. And then there's benchmarking. And honestly, anyone can do this. Anyone can pull some demographics. Anyone can pull the analytics. Anyone can do benchmarking. You don't have to be in the UX department to do it. And benchmarking consists of two things. One is taking a look at your customers and seeing what they're doing. But probably even more important in a lot of industries is looking at everything else. So when I was at Scana, one of the marketing teams really like to look at the other energy providers. But the other energy providers were as bad at it as we were, right? There wasn't anyone with a responsive design out there at the time. There wasn't anyone that didn't have a clunky, full of text, walls and walls of content. Everyone looked the same. So by that standard, we were doing great. But when you start looking at what the customers are used to, if you have a function to pay your bill on your site, they're going to be comparing you to Bank of America or anywhere else that they regularly go. They're not going to compare you, especially in the case of some place like Scana, they're not going to a competitor's monopoly to go see what their website looks like, right? So all of these are things that you can do to start building an idea of your customer in your head. Then there's getting more specific. This is where you start taking the leap into user experience and getting to know your customer specifically. Surveys are one of the cheapest, easiest ways to do this. To formulate some surveys, find out some very specific information, mostly about what the users want. If you're faced with a choice of you only got so much money, and you can either give them the ability to pay online or you can give them more products in the catalog, the best person to ask is your customer. What do you want us to do? If you don't ask your customer, some VP is going to tell you and the VP will be wrong. Existing customers are great if you can get them. And there's all kinds of tools. For example, SurveyMonkey. I've used it for years and years and years for free. Interviews. Interviews can be more informal than you realize. When we were starting our interviews with Scana, I took a fistful of gift cards and sat down at Starbucks because almost everyone there was a customer. And I'd ask them if I buy you a coffee, will you talk to me about your energy bill for a couple of minutes? Right? So I got in an hour, I got a tremendous amount of information, cost me less than $100. One thing to be aware of is bias. Sometimes we ask questions in such a way to get the answer we want to hear, and it's really tough to work around that, but it's pretty important, especially if you're doing these ad hoc things, because one thing that you'll find out is the business side. If you present analytics to them, if you present a recorded interview, they take it very seriously. The other thing that I have done at this level is share paper prototypes. Take a paper version of the mock-up and get some feedback on it. All of these things that I mentioned to you, I did long before I was ever in UX. This is how I got some of my information. But what happens? You've got all this information. What do you do with it? So this is the next leap into user experience. It's taking some of this information that you've gathered up and creating a picture in your mind. And you can do this with or without the UX folks. A picture in your mind of who your customer is. So I'm going to tell you about our company that we work for. Welcome to XYZ Insurance. At XYZ Insurance, we sell long and short-term disability and life insurance, which means the bulk of our customers are blue-collar working folks looking to supplement their income if something were to happen. We looked up the analytics. We're seeing that web traffic is increasing 7% per year, but we've seen a huge increase in mobile traffic over the last 2 years. And we're not really sure about these numbers because we only put top-level analytics on our site. We asked marketing, can you tell us about our customers? They told us that they're evenly split between men and women, but what they found is that the female in the house tends to pay the bills around 77% of the time. So this is some of what we know about our customers. We've done some benchmarking, and we've noticed that all but one of our customers has an online presence. And of those, half of those have the ability to pay their bill online. Interestingly enough, none of them have the ability to file a claim online. And we thought that was weird. So we sent out a survey. Of our respondents, 88% said that they would like to be able to access their information online. Some of them want to pay their bill with 17%. Of 82 of those would pay as long as you could use a credit card. And 93% are concerned about the security of their personal information. So they must have got snagged in one of those credit card things recently, so they're all nervous. We did some interviews, and some of the things that came out in our interviews that were very interesting were that passwords and usernames were hard to remember, especially if you're visiting the sites rarely. And we did some feedback from the paper mock-up because something in our gut told us that VP that wanted that login under the logo on the left-hand side didn't feel right. So we mocked it up on paper and we showed a few people, and overwhelmingly they expected to see the login in the upper right-hand corner. So your task is to take what you've learned. We're going to split into some groups. This is my assistant, happens to be my husband, Wayne Burrows. He's going to help me kind of organize folks into groups with 5 of them. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to create some customers for XYZ Insurance based on what you've heard so far. And you can see there's a lot of information available up here, so a lot of it's going to have to come from your imagination. Okay? But it's not completely made up. How many people in here have short or long-term disability insurance? How many in here have life insurance? You're a customer. So think about what you've heard. We know that it's pretty evenly split between men and women. So we have 5 stations, 2 up here and 3 back there. The 3 in the back will be women, these will be men, and that's the only guidance I'm going to give you as far as who your personas are. You'll give them names. You'll talk about them. So if you have a curmudgeon old fella named George, and he's 62 years old, you'll tell me, is he about to retire? Are his kids still at home? Think about who this user might be. Once you've thought about who they might be, talk about what they might want to do. Give getting ready to retire, what might his goals be? Is his most important thing to do on your site going to be paying a bill? Or is it going to be finding information about how to transfer his policy after he's not with his employer anymore? All right, so think about what that user's goals might be. There's going to be some things that are pain points for them. For example, this curmudgeon, he might not like the computer too much. He won't use one of those mobile things. All right? So what are the pain points? What are the delighters? What would make him thrilled? Any questions on the activity? We're going to have to do calisthenics if you guys fall asleep on me. All right. Yes.
Each group is going to do one person?
Each group is going to do one person. I do have some sticky notes because I'm not absolutely convinced that the ink won't bleed through the paper. They're over there in the center. If we can organize into 5 groups, and let's just do it fairly simply, cut this row into thirds and that row in half. So the back half, you're on the back corner, front half over here, front half here, center, you're on the wall, back, you're on the door. Yep. We're going to give them about 10 minutes. Come on up.
Are we a guy, or is this the guy?
We have 2 men and 3 women.
Okay.
Yep. Come on up and watch your step right over here.
Matt.
All right. So I'm going to get you guys started, then I'm going to wander. So we know that this particular person's a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Come on in. So y'all talk.
You might want to cut your microphone unless you want everybody else to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, they're still going to record.
Do we care? Well, let's start with the age and the sex, and that might lead better to the name.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Just start throwing it up.
Right.
And actually, the Sharpies did okay. You might be okay with the Sharpie.
We know it's a man, right?
Is it a man?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's go with
Not
the
convinced,
It
but
says
yes.
2 were men and then the 3 in the back.
Okay.
There you go.
Let's go with the.
All right, you guys have fun with him. We got 10 minutes for this. Excuse me. All right.
How young? Old enough to have a place to pay a bill, right?
How old is he?
Is it 25-year-olds or 90?
Throw him up there.
If you're employed, I probably do.
Who's back here? Okay.
Having a first kid.
Coming up with the user profile?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So Nancy, how old is
description
Nancy?
versus customer info.
Customer info is, description is their life. Description is, okay, let's talk about Nancy. How old is Nancy?
40-ish.
40-ish? Okay, so she's 40. Does she have kids at home?
2 kids.
2 kids. All right, she's got 2 kids. Does she work outside of the home? So she works. What does she do?
She works online, Etsy. She works at online handcraft stuff. Etsy.
Etsy. Okay. So now the difference between the description and the customer info is going to be, how is she a customer to us? What products of ours does she have? How long has she been a customer of ours?
Well, she has to be
She should be blue column job, right? That she's looking for short-term, long-term disability, not something like that. So maybe she'd be.
Well, she could still be. She could have had this policy with her other employer and brought it with her. So she'd be a special kind of person who's ported her coverage. So
maybe she's a single mom and she's 2 kids and she's more concerned about life insurance.
keep your imaginations going. Oh, how's our nurse?
RN. 2 kids, boy, girl, flip phone, smoke cigs. What else? Are we good? Good for right now. All right.
So what kind of customer is she? What's the customer info? What kind of products does she have with us, and how long has she been with us?
So that's what the description is?
Yeah, that's the customer info. The descriptions.
You're talking about
yep.
customer info. Okay.
Yep.
Existing customer or potential that would probably clearly define as goals.
Yeah. Just had a kid.
He's freaking out because he died.
Okay, so let me have you use your iPad to everything under the description. Customer info is who's Harvey to us? Is he an existing customer? Is he a brand new customer just looking to use our services now?
He's 50 years old.
Is he getting this through his job?
He's about
to get this. That's true. Some kind of corporate plan.
But through the job, you don't really administer, right? Just kind of there.
Well, for life insurance, for the disability, so we would have to make his goal to log in to submit a claim or.
So let me ask, is he a new customer or has he been with us for a while? So he's brand new. Okay, good.
Let's say set beneficiaries to it.
Okay.
So let's say user goals like basic set.
It's your vision.
One user goal, many user goals.
At least one user goal. Most people have more than one goal, but if they're brand new, I mean, he might have a very specific.
Yeah. So I think his goals are just to go from nothing to something. So payments, beneficiaries, profile.
He may have another one.
Yeah, he's planning on having the second. He's a busy police officer. Let's say this kid is like 2 or 3.
All right. Modify the coverage.
Yes, he will.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be dealing much with it.
All right, teams, here's where we shake it up just a little bit. Everyone is going to rotate 2. So you're going to over, everyone rotate 2. We're going to see what the other team said, and you're going to add to it. All right, so everybody rotate. Go clockwise. Don't look right at the light.
Across the beam. Yeah, we're going down there to the. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've done that so many times. Okay, another switch up. If you were the one doing most of the writing last time, you're not allowed to write this time.
Yeah.
Alright. User growth. Set up payment.
What's the lighters?
Okay, so what are delighters? Something they weren't expecting to work really well. Right? So it's those little touches. It's when I put the mint on your pillow at the hotel, right? That kind of stuff.
So we're thinking from an application standpoint.
Right. So in his experience on being on this website, what would make his day? If any of this is wrong, you know Harvey, because you've met him, you can change it.
What's the customer in? There's no customer.
Oh, he said yeah. Like what kind of products that you
They are our customer. So, what would really delight Phyllis? What is her mint on the pillow at the hotel? What's that one thing that's really gonna?
simplicity.
Giving her a smartphone.
A free smart 25 years.
So do you guys think they got her right? Do you think she's the description? Can you see her yet? Okay.
See, they don't have one, so we're just making one. I thought everyone was just for life insurance.
You should grab a note card for me and a Sharpie and write down the name and the age.
Loyalty, maybe a loyalty, customer loyalty.
Real time stats of how often they pay, or I don't know,
Oh, and whether or not they're a new customer. I think he's a new customer.
That's true. And you like Google. Yeah, exactly.
Guys, this is one of the
Oh, you enjoy riding today.
I know her, but I can electrocute her. Alright, what else? Pain points. What would be that? Not able to access this. If it's the same profile, payment, not payment.
What do I forget? What are the easiest
He would actually care. Yes, for bad. He has
Slow website.
Right
now. Slow website.
Oh, that's what
Website doesn't work.
Yeah. Crashes.
I think the paid for this is.
These are for your group. These are for your group. Under those, please.
Hard to access, like hard to find information, like maybe because you drag hard to recover.
Here, these are for your group. You want to hold on to those, please? These are for your group. Can you hold on to these, please? Thank you.
Too many emails. Like, sometimes we send too many emails.
Maybe the site doesn't have PDF.
Is there any more?
Jet, Fergie, Phyllis, and Nancy.
What do you want from your life?
Alright, you know what? What was that?
Do they have to be like no promotion emails? What's that savvy? It's ignore. No pitching.
Maybe like a backup.
Just give them a couple more minutes and then we're going to do the current exercise. How you guys feeling about your...
I think we're good.
Pretty confident.
Well, he's really tech savvy. What makes him so tech savvy?
Oh, he didn't do that. Maybe.
Do you guys agree with that?
Maybe he was hackers.
Police officer.
No,
Not gonna be
we
that.
don't really agree with that.
Yeah.
Cross it out and change
Probably a
it.
6-7, like enough.
Oh,
Why cannot you?
we filled out everything else now.
Why
based on
cannot
that.
he be a
She's
dick
running
savvy
out of
police
problems.
officer?
She's not gonna-
What's that?
Is that the rule that he's not a dick savvy?
No, I was just asking if
Yeah,
y'all...
he can be a dick savvy.
He can be.
He can.
Depends on what he does.
As long as you guys can picture him. So can you picture Jack? Can you picture him in your head? Okay.
So yeah.
So how are y'all feeling about Harvey? Can you picture him? Are you going to his house for the barbecue on Friday?
He base jumps in his free time.
Good. If you can't picture him in your head, add a couple more descriptions. Is he married? Well,
He's
he is
on the
married.
go. I think he's on the go because he uses the iPad only and he doesn't care about the desktop. So he's
Throw him up there. Picture him in your head. Got about 1 more minute for you to finish up.
I wouldn't do it if I
Yeah, I'm at the crime scene. They're about to catch this guy. He's stuck in here. We're trying to go in. Hashtag arrested.
Okay, teams. Please stay together as a team, but find an area of the room to sit down where you can kind of see your board if you need to refer to it. So yeah, the board you're at now. The board you're at right now. All right, each group, don't look at the light, each group was given a stack of index cards. Who's got the index cards? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Our upcoming sprint is about login and registration. Okay? Based on what you know about your person that you can now picture in your head, and you're going to go to his barbecue on Friday, and I mean, you know these people well now. We're going to write user stories for them. Okay? Here are some examples, but you'll base it on user goals as long as they have one that has to do with logging in and registration. Don't worry right now about how big the story is. If it's too big, it will get broken down. But right now, we're just trying to really get to what are all the things that we have to come up with in order for these users to have a good experience. So these are some examples of the kinds of things we might need to fit into this sprint. What happens when you, I can't remember my password. I can't remember my username. Okay? So think about it from their perspective. Here's an example. Jack is a new customer. So Jack might be coming on to the site for the first time. So he would be as a new user, as a new customer. I need to do this so that I can do this. Okay? So what I'd like is for each team to write a couple of user stories, and then we'll share them and see what kind of things that we could come up with. Sound good? All right, so you got about 10 minutes to work as a group. There's a couple more Sharpies over here if you want more than one person writing. Go. On your mark, set, go.
So the user stories regarding the login process. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you guys got a good one, you know, because you're the brand new, so you've got like some stuff that he might want to, some goals he might have. It's for this sprint. Yep. So if you're, so he wants to file a claim. Okay. Has he ever been on the website before? So what's his experience? What does he want to do to file that claim? How long has it been since he's been on there? Is he one of these people where maybe he's not been there in a while? Okay. So if he's just filing a claim, maybe he hasn't been on since he registered, and that was 4 years ago. Well, describe what Nancy is. What is her role?
She's an existing customer.
She's an existing customer. Has she ever been on the website before?
Yes. She's number 6.
Oh, great.
She
Okay.
wants to provide updated information.
Great.
So she's number 1.
No.
Just pick one.
Pick one or two.
And apply it to that.
Yep, use Phyllis. Yep, think about Phyllis. Picture her in your head, or whoever your person is. And why would you want to do that? Why would she? Why does Phyllis want to do that?
Well, because she moved a month ago, and she has to make sure her stuff is current because they can't be able to contact her.
Get her bills at the new address.
There you go. So that's the reason. So that she can get her bills.
Log in. Do we need to pick one of those, or we can make our own?
You can make up your own if you want, as long as it has something to do with login and registration. Yep.
See, the first thing they're saying
There's not a super wide variety, but there's more than you think, as she tells me constantly.
Yes.
So, this is an existing user. So, as an existing user, I need to be able to log in to get my information. Most basic. But then, as an existing user, I've forgotten my username. I've forgotten my password. Or I know my username. I need to change it because it was my email address. So, those kinds of user stories. I need to get a reminder. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yep, and you're welcome to use one of these as your base. If you just want to make Harvey come back to check on a claim or to file a claim. He needs to log in and what happens on his journey. So he's not real tech savvy.
She wants to use for it.
So as a mobile user, Oh, he's falling apart. He's falling apart at the seam. So that's a unique user, right? As a mobile user, I want to be able to log in. So think of that. Okay, you thought about the story from his perspective. Now you put your developer hat on. That's different, right? There's considerations. There's different things that you're going to have to be able to do to accommodate a mobile user. So as a mobile user, I want to be able to access the site with my iPad so that I can pay my bill while I'm waiting for my kid to get out of soccer. Right? Does that make sense? Those kinds of stories.
They tend to be jumping well past the login into writing stories.
Because they want to know why they're going there, which is perfectly okay.
Just letting you know.
Yep.
Letting you know. I think they're having the same struggle I tend to have, which is blurring the line between the user story and the dev requirements.
Mm-hmm. Let me hear what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, no one really cares about the login. That's just one step to get to what she wants to do. Right?
Well, that's part of it, though. Existing customer logs in
Just to check on our instructions. Should we be writing up several stories about login or just one that login?
However
Whatever.
y'all.
Okay. Kind of open-ended.
All right.
Yep. Some groups will pull them out. Some will. This is not an easy exercise once you actually sit down to do it, because in our minds we tend to jump right to the more technical aspects of things as opposed to what the user is trying to accomplish.
So basically, all of these user stories begin with customer logs in.
Do they?
It's all interacting with the website, right? It's not customer calls in.
Or they use their mobile device to. They still have to log in, I guess.
50-year-old flip phone user wants to receive a text-based bill reminder so she knows when she has to
Or a 50-year-old user wants to respond to the text message she just received to acknowledge, yes, she wants to pay her bill just like last month, on the same day as last month.
So lots and lots and lots of user stories. So pick just one or two that you want Phyllis to be able to do. Okay? And Phyllis can have different roles, right? She could be an existing user who just got a mobile phone. God help us, right? So she could be.
There's assumption that she doesn't have one.
So maybe she gets one. Then she is, as a new mobile user,
right.
I need to be able to do this, what we would consider really easy thing, and it's going to be really hard for her, right? Because she'll only have 3 on the tech savvy. She's never been a mobile user before. These are the kinds of things we think about when we think about these users, because we tend to think of, well, login's easy. Right? It's a username and password. Not so much. If you're thinking about things like a mobile user, and if you're not using HTML5, and as soon as you touch something, it pops and goes like that. Phyllis is, I'm done. Right? Phyllis is done. So, but Phyllis matters. Phyllis is a longtime customer of ours. So we need this to be a good experience for her. Does that make sense?
Your username is the third one, and then for
How you guys doing? Awesome. All right. These are not easy. They really aren't. A lot of people think they are until they sit down to write them, and they're like, well, wait, that's...
I want to what now? I'm not busy writing, and they're like talking away.
We are debating what's going on.
I want to enter 1 or 2 pieces of information and retrieve my...
See, now you're getting into design.
Okay.
Your user's not going to design your system for you.
I want to retrieve my username.
Do you have to specify how? No,
not yet.
Just the what.
Just the what and why, right?
Yep. It's the development team's job to figure out the how. Because there's lots of hows here, right? Like you could do just a pop and just a reminder that says your username is your email address. Right? There's lots of things once you get into your group of, all right, how are we going to solve this problem? Completely separate from the user. And we might use that one as an example to talk about. So. Okay, about 1 more minute, and then we're going to get back in a big group and talk about some of these.
A good way to save it.
She writes so, it's like typing.
Yeah. As a prospective customer?
Yeah, you want to be able to browse.
Just browse. Browse services.
Products and services? Yeah.
So the user story there might be more for the content people than the developers because the prospective user doesn't need to log in. But if they're putting too much behind the login that the prospective user can't see it, right? So that's how some of the user stories aren't so technical. Huh? No. Go ahead.
So, kudos on keeping us walking because I'm no longer sleeping. Nice work.
Oh, I can't sit in these things all day. All right, so let's come back to our seats.
I think the point of the exercise is to show how hard it is.
Whoa, I looked at the light.
Are we going to
Go ahead. No, fine. Okay, so even with our imaginary human beings in our minds and able to picture them and having dinner at their house on Friday, it's still not an easy exercise, is it? Right? Especially from when you're coming from the point of view of a developer. Because we jump to the next step. We start to solve it in the user story. Okay? So the group up here, read the one that we just said was a great example that we would talk about.
Yeah. As a returning user, this is my username. I want to retrieve my username.
Okay, and so what was the road that you all started to go down? Did any other groups find yourself solving the user's problem in the user story for them? Okay, so I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Business users think you're brilliant. Okay? They think you're brilliant. They think you're a little weird, but they think you're brilliant. All right? trust that in Agile, you'll get to the point where you're going to get to solve this user's problem. But before you can solve the user's problem, you need to define the user's problem. So in the example of you forgot your username, I can think of a half a dozen ways to solve that problem, right? Depending on the level of security required, you could just pop a reminder that the username is your password, right? Security is really tight. You might have to put in pieces of personal information and do a database call. Very different stories, right? But the base story where you start is, what is the problem? I forgot my username. Sometimes those problems are really easy to solve. And depending on the last magazine you read or the last conference you went to, you might start solving that in your head and doing it in a way that's much more complicated than maybe you need to. Very, very common. So let's have another example. What was one that you struggled with? So as a...
was different. It's something that we all tried, or I definitely tried to solve in the user story.
In the user story. So as a mobile user, I wanted to do what?
Reply to text message with confirmation to confirm a bill payment.
Okay. So I want to respond so that I can confirm a bill payment. Okay, and so how are you trying to solve it?
We went down the line of entering keypad presses, entering one for yes, two for no. Then we said, well, what if they don't have the credit card information? There needs to be a way to provide that. And so we wound up complicating, I think, this simple case by trying to cover all the various interactions that she could possibly have.
Yeah,
so it's hard to stay with the simple.
It is. It's very hard to stay with the simple. And honestly, what you do in that particular case, and this happens all the time, staying focused on a particular sprint's tough. You have had to have had that bigger conversation first and understand the whole picture of what the roadmap is. A lot of people think Agile is just development on the fly, right? We'll figure out what we're going to make next week. That's not actually the case. You need what, especially in UX terms, we call runway. Right? So you need to know a few sprints out so you can be asking the questions that you need to answered for that particular sprint. But you do a lot of that big picture thinking ahead of time so that you're not just now trying to figure out how this text message thing's going to work, because you might have already had a conversation and you're going to go a third party and they have it all set up for you already. Right? So staying small is tough. But it's really about what the user wanted to do. And all that other conversation happens outside of the story making. So that's why with the starting early, the UX runway of at least 3 sprints. So you would know, okay, 3 sprints from now, we're looking to do login. We're going to code login. So 3 sprints earlier, we're going to do our interviews and our spikes, or whatever it is that we need to find out. What is security going to require from us? People don't like entering their social security number. What other unique identifier do we have? How do we identify this customer? All those kinds of things need to be done from a technical perspective. Is that fair? Okay, so give me one more example. We haven't heard from all the teams yet. One of the other teams, tell us an example of one of your stories.
We had a a short one based on your original slide. As an existing customer, I want to log in securely so that I can log in without my information being compromised.
Okay. So what are they logging in for? And they want to feel good about it. They want to feel like the information is secure. So this is a common user story. I see this a lot. And it's half user story, half acceptance criteria. So what the acceptance criteria is the secure piece. The user wants to feel secure. There's lots of ways to solve that. There's technical ways to solve that. There's marketing ways to solve that. The little lock on the websites. It's a dirty trick, but everybody does it, right? It makes people feel warm and fuzzy, right? So as an existing user, I want to log in using my username and password so that I can what? Access my personal information is probably it, but the actual doing it securely becomes acceptance criteria. Does that make sense? All right, one last story. Which team hasn't read off yet? Okay. So that why? So, as a registered user, did you have some problem with your password as a registered user? Or are you just looking for instructions on what the password requirements are?
Area, the second one. More like what this gentleman said. More secure, wanting to know.
It could be my password is password, and I want to change it to something more secure.
Like password 2.
Exactly like that.
Yes. Yes. So it was interesting when my husband and I were preparing for this, that was one of the things that he brought up. We were at dinner and I said, so what are your pain points? He says, login's easy. You don't need that many stories for that. I said, so what bugs you? He says, well, I hate it when I get all the way through a login process and I put my password in and I put my password in again and then it pops up and it says, you didn't use the right characters. That's a pain point. That's something you can solve with a user story, right? And so I think that kind of gets to the spirit of what your y'all's user story was, right? So as a registered user, I want to know what the password requirements are so that I only have to type it once, right? So those types of things, that's a good story, but there's lots of intricacies. And as simple as login and registration seems, you could end up with 50 stories out of it in a couple of sprints. So then the other thing that we would do with this information is to help prioritize. We didn't do enough stories that we could throw them all up on the wall and move them around, but we can have some basic comments about it. So a lot of times the prioritization has to do with the 80-20 rule in situations like this, right? So you're going to have that interview guy who goes off the rails about something, his pet peeve, right? You're going to have the same type of person call the call center, right? And they're going to come screaming with their hair on fire. You've got to change this thing because this one person said that the blue logo gave them a seizure, right? You're going to have that vice president who couldn't see something on his iPad and now that becomes the #1 priority in the company, right? These things happen. But for the most part, we're sane individuals, and we would go with the 80-20 rule, which means that we're going to develop for the 80% and put those things for the 20% down at the bottom, and we may or may not ever get to them. So you only have so much time, you only have so much money. So in all of the situations that we've heard so far, I think the only one that probably would fall down into that list is getting into the text messaging, right? Because that's not the highest priority. If you can't log in and you can't pay your bill, because we know that from our survey, that's what most of the people wanted to be able to do, then that's going to take precedent from a priority standpoint over these other things. And that's where a lot of those statistics come in handy. Does that make sense? All right, so I saw lots of picture taking of this. These are some really good resources. And I believe that all of the presentations are going to be available, so you're going to be able to access these. I see we're getting a nod back there. So you're going to be able to access this. Well, I'll point out a couple of them about the tips. The simple wireframes. I know lots and lots and lots of developers who grew up doing wireframes in Photoshop. They take forever. And once you put it in Photoshop and show it to a business user, they're absolutely convinced that that's what it's going to look like. So my recommendation is always start with a fuzzy wireframe, something more sketchy, and then answer the questions of, no, of course, it's not really going to look like that. You're still going to get those. But Photoshop and Firework are really time-intensive ways to wireframe. But I'm going to show you a lot that aren't so time-intensive. And then testing. These are some really good resources for different types of testing, is usability testing, A/B testing, and a lot of these resources are free. A/B testing is when you're going to put out, say, 2 versions of a website and track the responses on each one of them to see which one of those, the A or the B, are most preferred by the customer. So, and it's just an algorithm that runs in the background of which one of these versions that the customer is going to see when they come to the site. Yep. Yeah, it's actually a really, really good way to solve arguments internally. So you can do heat maps and things, and so I pick on that argument about the login being in the middle of the page, which was down at the fold, because that was real. That was a vice president who was absolutely convinced that's the way it needed to be. And the heat tests on the A/B were like, nobody found it there. Yeah. Everybody looked for it here. And he was just trying to be different. Maybe that's not the place to be innovative. Design patterns exist for a reason, because people are an autopilot. So here are some of my favorite tools. Pencil is great. Like Balsamiq used to be free. Not so much free anymore, which has made Pencil my favorite over Balsamiq. But Pencil's free. Pencil Project, really quick and dirty sketches. It's great. My favorite for interactive is Axure. It's a little bit harder to use, but it really mimics those interactions, and you can do a lot of great testing before you spend the time coding. And you can put detailed requirements into the wireframe itself, so it's pretty cool. Axure's not fantastic for phone dev. So you can show it on a phone, but it's not fantastic. The Heroku does a little bit better if you're doing some responsive stuff. Visio, because everybody's got it. If you don't got anything else and you can't use a whiteboard, there's always Visio. So. Yes, or Paint. Paint would work as well. So, does anyone have any questions? I hope you enjoyed that. Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.